adamsbrighteon.com, and this is about the 2 million gallons of toxic firefighting water that was used in Ohio is now being, or at least it seems like maybe 1.1 million gallons of that is being shipped to Texas to be injected into the ground. And people are freaking out. People are losing their minds over this. But it's all over the news. Let me give you an example here. ABC13.com, Eyewitness News. Here it is. Deer Park facility receiving 2 million gallons of Ohio derailment's toxic runoff, Judge Hidalgo says. And this story from Deer Park, Texas, which I believe is kind of south of Houston, it's in Harris County. The leaders of Harris County entered Thursday, I'm reading from the story, with the understanding that firefighting water runoff from the Ohio train derailment 1,300 miles away is on its way to a Deer Park toxic disposal facility. Now, this is being handled by a company called Texas Molecular. Texas Molecular, okay? Remember that name. Now, the EPA sent a statement to ABC News with the following information. Pay attention, this is just wild. Quote, a total of 1,715,433 gallons of contaminated liquid has been removed from the immediate site of the derailment. So here's the EPA, by the way, now for the first time admitting that there's a contamination issue. Isn't that amazing? This is the same EPA that says, oh, it's safe to go back to your homes. It's safe to drink the water. Now they're saying, well, but there's millions of contaminated gallons of liquid. They continue, quote, of this, essentially 1.1 million gallons have been hauled off-site, with most going to Texas Molecular, a hazardous waste disposal facility in Texas. A smaller amount of waste has been directed to Vickery Environmental in Vickery, Ohio. All right, so let's just call it 1 million gallons because that seems to be close to what they're talking about. 1 million gallons of toxic, contaminated liquid that the EPA admits is being shipped from Ohio on the highways.
That doesn't make sense.
To Texas.
It doesn't make any sense.
To be injected underground. Now, in Texas, there's an organization, a government group called the TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And they told ABC 13 that Texas Molecular is, quote, authorized to accept and manage a variety of waste streams, i.e. a whole bunch of toxic chemicals, including vinyl chloride, right, as part of their Resource Conservation and Recovery Act hazardous waste permit and underground injection control permit. You got that? So they drill a deep well, thousands of feet down. They take all this toxic waste and they inject it into the well. You know, like where well water comes from, you know, where water aquifers are running around down there. Now they say, no, it's deeper than the water aquifers. It's all safe. It's all good. You know, right. Probably the same people that said, take more vaccine boosters, right? Now, this should bring up obvious questions in the minds of anybody paying attention. So, I mean, shall we start with one of the most obvious questions? If you could dispose of vinyl chloride this way, why did you set it on fire in Ohio?
Exactly.
Huh? Right? Why did you set it on fire? Well, guess what, folks? I have just completed an interview in studio with Mr. Don Laux, who's the Texas expert on hazardous materials response, incidents, and emergency management, stuff like that. He's also, by the way, a veteran U.S. Air Force fighter pilot, flew the F-111s and trained a bunch of fighter pilots in the Air Force, and he served in the Texas Guard, I think for 13 years as a soldier and so on. So I have him in studio. He's explaining all this to me, and it's mind-blowing what he's explaining about this, because he says, you know, the excuse they had about why they set this stuff on fire in Ohio, East Palestine, the excuse they had was because they didn't want the tanker truck, well, the tanker car, I mean, for the train to explode and injure people with shrapnel. Okay, now pay attention, because so they drilled holes in the sides of the cars. The tanker cars, and they dumped the liquid out into apparently a ditch, and then they set it on fire. And this is the vinyl chloride. They set it on fire, folks. If they had already dumped it out of the tanker cars, there was no more risk of shrapnel from any explosion blowing up inside the tanker cars. In other words, once they had the liquid out of the tanker cars, there's no more risk of the explosion that they were afraid of, so they didn't have to set it on fire. And they could have, from the very beginning, they could have called this company Texas Molecular, because as we now have learned, Texas Molecular has a hazardous waste permit that includes vinyl chloride to inject it underground. So there are so many admissions here. Like, number one, yes, vinyl chloride is a hazardous waste product. Number two, there are companies that are licensed to dispose of this stuff, which means they didn't have to set it on fire in Ohio and unleash all these dioxins into the air, which is what you get when you set fire to chlorinated compounds, such as vinyl chloride and the PVC that was in other cars. It was also on fire. Polyvinyl chloride. And then we have the question, they put out the fire. Okay, first they set it on fire, and then they put out the fire. And in putting out the fire, they have all this toxic firefighting water waste.
Right.
Which they wouldn't have created if they didn't set it on fire in the first place.
It makes no sense. It just makes no sense.
Morons.
Right.
They should have just pumped out the vinyl chloride, sent it to this company. And no, I don't agree with them injecting it underground, but they could have incinerated it.
No, they could have called the
at very high
company
temperatures,
first,
which would destroy the molecule without creating dioxins, by the way. There's a way to do that at extremely high temperatures. But they set it on fire, and then they used 2 million gallons plus of firefighting water to put out the fires? And now that is 2 million gallons of toxic firefighting water that apparently they're loading onto trucks and driving it to Texas. What the F, man?
Exactly.
What happens if one of these trucks has an accident on the highway? Why would you put all these road miles on all this toxic waste?
This stuff is becoming more and more questionable by the day. Thank you guys for continuing to bring more attention to these unexplainable acts, this neglect of human decency, by these corporations and these politicians and government officials in regards to the catastrophes that they're creating in our communities. It's just more and more suspect by the day. You guys, please follow me on Patreon for real, raw, uncut, unfiltered content. Things that I cannot post here on YouTube. And if you're looking for land in bug out areas in Texas, I have some for sale and for lease where your families can have immediate access and get out these terrible, heavily populated areas that we call cities during these times. And if you're looking for land in other areas, I can assist you with that as well. Go to purplerzan.com. Any questions, go to purplerzan@gmail.com. Thanks for all the community for contacting us and sending us links and videos to bring to the public's attention. And you guys watch this world, watch the weather, smell your water, boil and purify your water before you use it. If it has been exposed to these type of chemicals that you just heard about, the water's no good. You can't boil it, you can't drink it, you can't inhale it. Do not brush your teeth with it. Do not bathe with it. Do not take showers with it. Do not wash your dishes with it. Do not clean with it. And you guys keep surviving. purplerzan.com.